The shock of Pearl Harbor galvanized Waterford as well as the nation, and both prepared for war. For local Quakers, though, any military response was in conflict with their deeply held abhorrence of violence and killing. One family's letters vividly illustrate their dilemma. Frederick and Mary Phillips Stabler, birthright members of the Society of Friends, lived on the farm adjoining Waterford on the west, land the Phillips family had farmed since the late 18th century. Fred was working as an engineer with the Civilian Conservation Corps. Mary managed the household and kept an eye on their 3 children, sons Arthur and Brooke, and daughter Anne. As the nation rapidly mobilized for war, Arthur decided he could not and would not join the armed forces. He was the intellectual of the family and deeply committed to pacifism. While he was prepared to go to prison for his beliefs, the Quakers and other historic peace churches had worked with Congress before the war to craft a mutually acceptable alternative to military service, the Civilian Public Service Program. Between 1941 and 1947, some 12,000 conscientious objectors served in work of national importance at 152 CPS camps throughout the U.S., including Arthur Stabler. While Arthur worked at a CPS camp in North Carolina, Brother Brooke enlisted in the Army Air Corps in March 1942, and within a year was in North Africa as part of Operation Torch. He would make the Air Force his career, retiring finally as a lieutenant colonel. His older brother did not approve and was further shocked when he learned that his sister Anne had enlisted in the Marine Corps about a year later. In a letter to Anne, Arthur wrote, "You all don't seem to realize the importance of the act you take, that in doing so you contradict the best principles you inherited from Christianity and Quakerdom in particular, that in so doing you implicitly admit that you never really believed 'thou shalt not kill' and 'love thy neighbor' all along, and that all question of morality is a legend which disappears in the face of a real situation." Arthur poured out his anguish in several more pages, but Anne evidently had no regrets. Anne was finding her new work interesting and enjoyable. Her letters home were full of pride at mastering skills formerly reserved for men. "You should see us in our trucks. Today I was out on the driving course, and here comes the lieutenant of our school up and hops in. Boy, was I scared, because that was the first and only time he has ridden with any of us. He didn't say anything to me, but when he got out, he told my instructor, who was a sergeant, that I knew more about driving than he did." By October 1943, Anne had been promoted to private first class. She wrote her mother from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, with details of more lethal training. "For the last 2 days, they have been taking a few of us girls up to the rifle range and teaching us the little tricks on the M1 rifles. They are heavy as the devil and kick like a cannon, but the lieutenant seems to think we will make sharpshooters someday. I made quite a few bullseyes, much to my surprise. Also, my shoulder is sore as the devil. I hope we go out again today. It is really thrilling." Back in Waterford, meanwhile, Mary Stabler was aiding the war effort in more Quakerly ways. She was executive secretary of the Loudon chapter of the American Red Cross and was busy organizing local women to take nursing courses, prepare surgical dressings, round up blood donors, take care of soldiers as they passed through the county, and many other activities to support the national defense. Her husband Fred was then in the Army Corps of Engineers, which had taken over elements of the Civilian Conservation Corps after the war broke out. It was at this time, 1943 incidentally, when Fred and Mary were also working to establish the Waterford Foundation to preserve their hometown. That left Arthur as the only member of the family not actively assisting the war effort. His holdout ended in October 1943 when, remarkably, he enlisted in the Army. After basic training and enduring about a year unassigned, Arthur eventually went into intelligence and was sent to New Guinea and the Philippines. As a newspaper account put it, his chief job is one-man patrol from advanced foxhole positions to spot Japs who try to infiltrate American lines. By September 1945, a month after the Japanese surrender, Arthur was in Japan as part of the American occupation force. In a long letter home, he reflected on the war and its incalculable costs, and on its unexpected benefits. "When I came into the Army, I took the position that it was right to fight in this war, or that this war was justified. The curious thing that now obtains is that never in the history of Japan or America has there been as much amity and understanding between their people generally. It took a war to bring that about. And I feel that if this war has brought about these things, then it was worth the sacrifice involved. The rest of his family and most people in Waterford and in the nation had, in their countless individual ways, come to the same conclusion. In addition to the Stabler family, Waterfordians contributed to the war effort in a variety of ways. Waterford Book Club minutes from the late 1930s through 1945 detail countless calls for Red Cross volunteers, donations of volunteer sewn and rolled bandages, drives for clothing for European refugees, and support for hospitals and soldiers' homes stateside. The club met monthly during the war, but dedicated their time together for Red Cross and other war handwork. Many Waterford sons and daughters enlisted in the armed forces and auxiliary units. They stayed in touch with friends and family back home with postcards and airmail letters, eager for stories from home. Some newcomers who moved to Waterford after the war found camaraderie among fellow veterans such as Bill Hunley. His account of his service in the European theater is archived at the United States Holocaust Museum, including his memories of the liberation of Ohrdruf, a subcamp to Buchenwald, and the first Nazi camp liberated by U.S. troops.